Today I want to talk about soil composition. Soil is the most important part about gardening, and it can actually take about 7 years to build up the perfect garden soil. So I'm going to show you how you can tell what kind of soil you have or what's in there. I took about a cup of dirt, we'll call it dirt at this stage, and filled the rest of this jar with water and shook it really well, and then I let it sit overnight. And we're going to see that the top layer is clay, because clay has very, very, very fine particles, and so it floats to the top. There's a middle layer. Let's see if I turn it this way, but you might see it better. A middle layer of loam, and that's what we are shooting for. Loam is 40% clay, 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. So here's our loam, and that's most of it, and then there's sand on the bottom. You are shooting for loam, and how do you get that? Well, you start adding organic matter or compost into your soil, and over time you can actually get a soil that is really mostly loam, which this soil is, and that's what we need to be in our soil structure. I want to talk about soil testing with this soil test kit. We're going to test for pH, whether you have acid or alkaline soil. We're going to test for nitrogen, which helps plant leaf growth. And we're going to talk about phosphorus, which helps to develop fruit, and potassium, which is responsible for water movement and minerals and such in the soil. Here where I am in the west, we have plenty of potassium because we have alkaline soil. You'll have alkaline soil where you don't get much rainfall. In areas where there's plentiful rainfall, you're likely to have acid soil. But we're going to test today and see what kind of soil I have to deal with and what kind of amendments I need to add to the soil before I plant. So I have gathered soil sample from my garden beds. I have a whole lot of garden beds, and so this is from bed number 2 that I've marked it. And when you get your soil samples, you want to take it from all over your bed. So I generally take one soil sample from each end and then one in the middle. Shake it up really good. And now I'm going to test for pH. And to do the pH test, you're going to use the green thing. And the instructions are in this test that you buy. I bought this one at Home Depot for $15. But they're pretty easy to find. I like the rapid test. So I'm going to fill to the soil line right here for the pH with part of my soil sample. And that just should do it. That's about right for my soil line. And then I'm going to take distilled water, have that here, and the reason I think we use distilled water is so that minerals and such don't interfere with the test. And I'm going to fill the rest of it up to the water fill line. It comes with a nifty pipette in the kit. You can do this. They call these little boxes comparators because you're going to shake up chemicals and compare it to the color that they have there. Now, everything here is color coordinated, and I need my green pills. We're all coordinated with color here, and I'm going to open this capsule now. Like a pill capsule, you're supposed to open it this way. However, I've had a hard time doing that and had the powder inside go everywhere. So I like to tap it down and just cut off the end, and I do it over a folded piece of paper so that any that I get on the paper I can easily, and this one doesn't want to come out, there we go. Oh, I'm getting it everywhere. There we go, it's coming out finally. I said these are difficult to work with sometimes. Okay, let's get all this powder here on the paper, and I can just put the rest of it in there fairly easily. Now, put it on very tight, and believe me, I've made the mistake of not making sure it was all the way closed and got water everywhere. You're going to shake it really well. And we're going to let it sit. And I have a test I did on another bed. It's not quite full because I opened it and spilled it all over me. But as you can see, the green here is probably even darker than that. Our natural pH here is a 9. We have very alkaline soil. So that's from a previous test, and you can see, and we can watch that one develop. Our next test for nutrients is done a little differently. I'm going to take, I just use a tablespoon of soil and then distilled water on top of that. And you need a ratio of 1 part soil to 5 parts distilled water, and then you stir it up and you let it settle out so that the dirt is on the bottom. So let's test for nitrogen. Oh, this is an old test. Let's get my new one. Okay. What we're going to do is you just barely put the pipette on the surface there, and fill this up to the water line. It takes several pipettes full to do it. You can see the line there. Okay, now since this is a purple test, we need a purple pill. Let's get me a piece of paper here. My handy assistant Phil did that for me. And I'm going to do this the same way. Yeah. We're going to put the contents, the capsule, see on the top there. It's falling out, and we do this the same way, and we shake it. We let it develop for 10 minutes, usually not longer than 10 minutes, but it can take 10 minutes to develop. And then that is our nitrogen test. The other tests for phosphorus and potassium are done the exact same way, and so I'm going to go ahead and do those, and we'll see what soil is made up of. Okay, it's time to look at our test results from bed number 2, which held pumpkins last year. Pumpkins are very heavy feeders, so I'm not surprised at the results. We see our pH test here, which is like darker green than their darkest green. Like I said, our soils are generally around a 9 here. So that doesn't surprise me. And to fix that, I'm going to add some aluminum sulfate to my soil per the bag directions. And that will acidify my soil some. Most vegetables like to grow between 6 and 6.5 pH, which is slightly acidic. So when I get my soil to 7, I'm generally pretty happy. It takes quite a bit. Aluminum sulfate is a short-term solution for raising pH. For a longer-term solution, you want a real soil sulfur, but that takes a long time to work. So I will probably use aluminum sulfate this spring, and in the fall, when I put the garden to bed, I'll put some soil sulfur in it. Nitrogen test. This isn't surprising that there is no nitrogen whatsoever in my soil, and that's pretty common at the end of a gardening season, or beginning, I should say. So no nitrogen whatsoever. This one surprises me in that this bed has no phosphorus either. Usually I have a little bit of phosphorus in there. But for phosphorus, you can use a phosphate. You can use bone meal to put that in per package instructions per square feet. And you can't, nitrogen, you have to really worry about the right amount. Too much nitrogen will burn your plants, turn the leaves yellow, won't be good for them, or produce too much leafy growth and not enough fruit. So you have to be careful about how much nitrogen you put in your soil. Not enough, you don't feed your plants, and too much, you burn them. But phosphorus, it doesn't matter if you have too much phosphorus in the soil. The plant will just take what it needs. And the same with potassium. The plant just will take what it needs, so you don't have to worry about putting too much in. Which is here is typical of alkaline soils. It's sufficient to surplus in there. You can hold these up to the light to read them better. But here with alkaline soils, there's plenty of potassium in potassium. They also say potash in the soil, so generally we don't have to worry about that. The kit comes with this list, and it can list just about everything you can think of to grow, and the pH that the soil should be for that particular plant. So it's very handy. Like I said, most vegetable gardens like a pH of 6 to 6.5, and so that's what we're going to aim for.
The best place to find fertilizer for your garden is a horse farm. It's a good place to get manure that's mixed with sawdust, and the nice thing about it, they want to get rid of it. So we're going to go up and get a couple of truckloads. I've been coming to this horse farm for about 20 years to get my manure. It's a good place to get it, really inexpensive, $5 a load, but there is some etiquette. If you're going to go to a horse farm, when you pass a horse, it's like a 2 mile an hour as you're passing the horse. You don't want to spook the horses, and you'll get along just fine with the owners. The great thing about horse manure, it's mixed heavily with sawdust. So sawdust will absorb your nitrogen, the manure will release the nitrogen, and after it composts, you got something real. Isn't that right? Horse farms use a lot of sawdust in the corrals, and that's one of the reasons why horse manure and sawdust combined into a mulch and compost for a couple of years is so good for your garden. Depending on what time of year you come to pick up manure will depend on how much you can take. Now this manure right here is probably composted for about 3 years, and because it's still March, this manure is still a little bit damp from the moisture from the winter time. So if you take a look at my wills, you can see that there's a lot of weight on the back of my pickup truck. So one of the things you want to check when you're hauling something this heavy is going to be the condition of your leaf springs. So you want to make sure your leaf springs aren't folded back. And right now my leaf springs are almost flat, and that pretty much tells me I'm at the maximum amount of weight. This manure pile right here is about 3 years old. This manure pile over here was started about 1.5 years ago, and he'll build this up until it's about halfway up to that tree. And then once this pile is finished, they'll start filling this pile, and then they'll start loading this area with new manure. So this manure right here has probably been composted for about a 3-year period of time, and by then any seeds or anything else is going to be well composted. The heat's going to burn off anything that's going to be inside. It's going to be well mixed and broken down, and for $5 a truckload, you can't beat the price. Before leaving with your manure, make sure your load is covered. All the people who drive convertibles and motorcycles will appreciate the effort, and in most states it's required by law to have your loads covered. But you'll want to do the best you can to tuck everything in so that when you get on the road, you're not going to fertilize the street. This is one of our raised beds, and right now we're preparing the soil for peas. It's the end of March, but we're getting ready to plant the peas. And what looks like snow isn't snow. So right here we have about 3 inches or 4 inches of manure, and then we have triple phosphate and aluminum sulfate. And normally we'd till this in, but we don't got the tiller running quite yet. And so as we plant the peas, we'll go ahead and turn the soil a little bit at a time to put the peas in. But this is an example of preparing the soil. Now last year we had our onions here, which are heavy feeders on nitrogen, and that's one of the reasons why we're putting so much manure in here, because the manure is going to be rich in nitrogen. This manure has been composted for 3 years. So that's basically what the rest of the bed looks like. This is our first day in the garden. We have a lot of work in front of us. Because the onions were heavy feeders on nitrogen, we're going to put some urea in with this soil. And urea is really potent when it comes to nitrogen, but you got to make sure you put the right amount so you don't end up burning your plants. And prior to putting the urea in here, we're going to take another soil sample and see where the elements are to see how much further we need to amend the soil.